Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first virtual conference, Play All Day, a series of webinars all about the Play framework. My name is Laura Masterson. I'm the community manager here at Typesafe, and I'm honored to host our set of speakers today. They are going to be sharing their experiences and lessons learned with the Play framework. I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping items. As the moderator mentioned, these are being recorded. And we're going to be making the sessions available online on our YouTube channel, as well as our blog once we wrap up. Look for those in about a day or so. We'll also be sending out a link with the recordings to everybody who registered for the event. And if you have questions, I'll do my best to address those as Adam continues through his presentation. If he runs over time and we don't have enough time for the Q&A at the end, we'll be following up with everybody directly via email. So if you don't have your questions answered, don't worry. So with all of that, I'm going to hand things over to Adam Evans. He's the technical lead for the BBC Children's Future Media. Thank you, Adam, for joining us today. I'm going to hand things over to you.
Thank you, Laura. My name is Adam Evans. I work at the BBC, and I led the move to using Play Framework and Scala for children's. Children's consists of two brands or two products, CBeebies and CBeebies. CBeebies is catered for the younger audience, 3 to 6 years old, and CBeebies is catering for the older audience, 6 years and on. Presentation will mostly be about our experiences and our reasons of using Play with CBeebies. So what is CBeebies? As I said, it's a website for children aged 4 to 6. It's essentially an aggregated view of content from elsewhere in the BBC. So there's no user input. We just take data such as videos or games, which we've added in an XML format, and we display that. We get roughly 2 million unique users a week, so we get a fair amount of traffic. What is particularly of high importance on CBeebies and the children's products is we have very high UX demands. If we make changes or children can't find what they want on the site, they cry. So any features we add or any changes we make to the product have to be very incremental. And the old code base was built on PHP using SendMVC, which was bought a long time ago by the BBC to add additional in-house features. So our old architecture, sorry about these slides, they look to have broken the formatting. Our old architecture was built on an in-house platform known as Forge. Forge used PHP for the front end. No database reads or writes happened from PHP at all. Anything which dealt with data or database reads or writes were put behind a Java service. So our CBeebies application integrated with several services across the organisation. We used Solar for indexing of content. There's a product called Electron, which is essentially a data store of data entered into our CMS. There's a product called Nitro, where we store videos, and Games Grid, where we have services for handling games functionality, such as high scores. All these services were put behind RESTful Java services. So that was the old architecture we had, which we wanted to move away from. So we had some issues which prompted the move to Play. We had a large legacy code base. It was several years old. It was developed by a third party, and we've had many developers come and go since. And it was suffering the usual problems. It was becoming hard to work on with confidence. The quality of the test varied. It was hard to add new features with confidence. Another problem we noticed was PHP, although it can although you can use it asynchronously for aggregating data from third-party web services, it's a non-trivial task. That's something where Play really excels in. You can asynchronously collect data from third-party web services. So we had some issues with the code base, and we also had an opportunity arise. A lot of our audience, due to the popularity of cheap mobile devices, are accessing the site now from tablets and mobiles, which our current product didn't cater for. So we needed to build a responsive website. Looking at our existing technology and PHP code base and our existing stack, there was some questions asked. Was it fit for purpose using PHP? Was there better tools out there? So with this opportunity, we started looking around at how we can approach it. So we knew we had a problem. We had an old legacy code base. It was hard to work on, and we needed to take it responsive. So what did we do? As developers, we had the right experience of different tools and different architectures, different platforms. So we took this experience and we ended up looking at Play, because Play suited our needs exactly. Play works really well for web applications. It has some modern tooling in there. So there's the assets with the CSS, LESS, JavaScript unification. It really excels at writing modern web applications, providing a full set of tools. The other advantage of Play is the tools it provides, you can choose whether to use it or not, so it doesn't force any particular technology on yourselves. So what did we do? We needed to come up with some requirements. We also needed to sell our technology of choice to the management. So what we did, we were decisive, which is a real key thing to be if we're trying to sell a technology to management. You need to be decisive and believe in it yourself. So we used our previous experience to recommend the tooling. We approached the management with a clear solution forward. And being clear and being decisive gave management the confidence to grant some time for a spike, which we had a 2-week spike to create a proof of concept. What we didn't do, as my colleague Ashley Glynn calls it, is a framework beauty contest. Normally when that happens, you spend a lot of time looking at various frameworks, looking at various features and comparing them, where what we find is if you just pick something which looks like the best fit and run with it, you find out very quickly or not if it meets your needs. So why did we choose Play? Again, of course with this, Scala, if we're honest, Scala is a really exciting new technology. It's fun to work with. But that wasn't the only thing which drove us to use Play. It's a full stack web framework. It provides everything you want as a web developer. So it provides functionality to talk to external web services. That's built out the box, and it does that really well. You've got less for the CSS modification, or you can plug in Sass. Again, with JavaScript, with CrowdJS, we already used that and it works really well. So it provides a great set of tools to get started, but it's also extensible as well due to using SBT and the way it's constructed. The reactive architecture, all our data comes from third-party web services. So in our old application with PHP, we were making blocking calls synchronously, where now we can get performance improvements because these days users want to see content as fast as possible. If you have a slow website, your users aren't happy. The type template system is amazing, especially when you're refactoring. That was a huge benefit. And again, there's been a lot of noise and cries about Play. A lot of big companies are using it, and there's been a lot of case studies. So it has been proven to work. We wasn't going into the unknown. So we have 2 weeks to prove that it works. So our application is a front-end product. So we play to the audience. The business value for CBeebies is in the front end. So we've demonstrated with Play that we can immediately show visual progress. The back ends are impressive. If we concentrate on the back end, the people, the stakeholders we need to sell this to, the back end wouldn't mean much to them, where we could show them progress very quickly, visually. So what we did, we concentrated on the templates, and then we slowly wired in the data. And we also set up a basic build pipeline on AWS. Play allowed us to do this quite easily in the way that it generates a distribution. So not only could we show the proof of concept of the framework, but we could show a end-to-end product from development to deployment, and how Play allows for that to happen. And the first spike was successful. We managed to do in a 2-week spike more than what we've done in the previous couple of sprints, which demonstrated the productivity you can gain from using Play and modern tooling. So we were able to gain confidence for the business to take it forward. And we demonstrated that it was also relatively easy for a PHP developer, who our team mainly consisted of at the time, could pick up a new tool. So we had 2 people on the sprint, and we was with different skill sets, and we was able to demonstrate how these skill sets can be utilised to get an application deployed quite quickly. So after the spike as a business, how do you move forward? We identified that Play was a good fit, but there were some questions. At the time, there was a small team of 4 developers on the project, mainly PHP with some Java experience. How do we take that team into the new world of Scala, which is, if we're honest, very different from Java and sometimes can appear scary, especially if you're on the internet reading blog posts about functional programming. So how do we resource that? We wanted to also grow the team. So as well as take the existing team into using this new technology, how do we also recruit? Our system platform, the BBC has Forge, as I mentioned, which uses PHP and Apache Tomcat. How do we deploy to our system platform? How do we manage the risks? while there were risks in moving to new technology, there was also risk in the current technology didn't fit our needs anymore. So the team, we started small, 3 developers. We also split the front end and back end, so the developers with the Java experience concentrated on the back end, and the people with PHP experience focused on the front end. And we did that to avoid the Scala overload. Using the play templates, which are Scala, we thought it would be a nice introduction into Scala and break people in easy. And that worked well. It worked well, but it was a good and a bad thing in hindsight. It was good in we could be productive very fast. And what we noticed though is once people started looking more into the back end, just because they were used to looking at the templates, they hadn't gained the experience elsewhere in the application. So while it worked for productivity reasons, in hindsight it might not have been the best thing to do long term. It might have been good to get the PHP developers pairing and working on the back end from the start. And our back end started out very Java-like because we knew Java. We used Scala syntax called sugar in places, but it started out Java-like to start with and became more idiomatic Scala as we gained experience. And we also had a big recruitment drive, which was very successful because we were using these new technologies. We found it very easy to have a recruitment drive. There was a lot of interest. There was interest from candidates who would not normally see applying for roles within children. So it brought some advantages trying to recruit the best talent out there. The platform, we took a radical approach compared to a typical BBC website. We had the old Forge platform, which was PHP and Java, deployed applications to Tomcat. There was a strong mismatch of technologies on the old platform. There was an impedance between the loose decoupling, especially for our user case, a very basic web application which takes data and renders it. We deployed it to bare metal hardware. So in the new platform, we had a single tier for the business and rendering logic. There wasn't this loose coupling. It wasn't justified for this product. Also, AWS was being trialled just at the right time elsewhere in the business. So we were able to utilise that and bring in continuous delivery at the same time of Play, which Play allows you to do fairly easily. A couple of other things on the side is we moved from Subversion to Git for more flexibility. When we deploy our Play applications using some of the tooling elsewhere in the business around AWS, we baked AMI images and had one-click deploy. And this was fairly easy to integrate with Play with SBT. We can generate RPMs with an SBT and then just pass them into our bake system. Our architecture when we started with Play used Varnish, Nginx, Mod PageSpeed and Play 2. And we ended up with Play 2. There's a lesson in over-optimization. We didn't require the complexity. Play 2 itself is very good at serving your web pages or your applications. Sometimes there's no need for a reverse proxy in front unless you want multiple applications under the same domain. Managing risk, which is a big one when you're trying to sell a new technology. while we were doing things differently, we weren't doing things new. We already had an heavy use of Java in the BBC and existing experience on the JVM. Cosmos, which was our internal AWS tooling, had internal clients already. And either way, our inherited code base did not meet the product expectations, so we had to make changes, whether that be rewriting PHP or look at different technologies. So we had a risk anyway, but play looked to be the lowest risk for us while giving us the greatest benefits. And on the slides again, best practices has changed since our original code base was originally deployed. So our approach, I like this one, the no more tiers approach. As I said, our audience is quite hard to cater to, so we come up with the no more tiers approach, which was to be iterative, make discrete changes, but we had tough editorial demands and timeframes and audience. So Play allowed us to be iterative and be discrete. It provided a tooling to do that. Our product is split into nice vertical sections. So we have games, we have songs, we have makes. What we did, we updated. When we have these sections, there's basically an index and a view. So what we did, we concentrated on the main content item page, the view first, and made small changes to these, and we used some clever proxy rules to use the old PAL application on PHP and the new Scala application, and we did this incrementally through each section. Now the vertical slices work quite well in Play, and especially with the plugin system. So each section could be developed as a plugin. We'd have some horizontal plugins which cover data access and default templates, and then we have vertical plugins which with each section. So it gives us primitive feature toggles, and it also meant we can develop each section in isolation, which works quite well for testing. Things have since changed from this due to business needs, but we still make heavy use of the plugin system, which comes in Play and a part of SBT. So that's a brief overview of what the product is, why we moved to Play. So where we're now. It's been about 12 months since we started on our journey. Our first live deployment went out in December 2013. We've been incrementally deploying new sections of the site since migrating to Play. We're nearly there now on CBeebies, and we've just recently started on the journey for CBeebies. It was the first public-facing Scala application and Play application for the BBC, and it was the first application deployed onto AWS using Cosmos. We were able to buy management buy-in on the continuous delivery model, and there's been a huge amount of work in the BBC around continuous delivery. We were the first to prove it works, and since then other people within the organisation that have started using Play framework based on our experiences. They've seen it meets their requirements, and they've seen it can be used and deployed, and they can get all the productivity benefits out of it. People enjoy using Scala. It suits our needs well. So we've been able to prove that Play works, and we've been able to sell that across the business. And more importantly, our stakeholders are happy. because we're now able to deliver a responsive website. So things we learned. As anything, we hit a few small bugs in play. But it's an open source project, and that means if you hit a bug, you can fix it yourself and commit that up if it's deemed a priority. Otherwise, again, you can triage these things, and if it's not a blocker, you can wait for it to be fixed, or you can, I guess, get other outside people to look at it, which was quite nice. Again, being an open source project, there's a vast number of libraries you can use and plugins. So especially with Play Free and SBT Web, that looks really exciting. But not all of that, it's built on the JVM, so all of these existing Java libraries out there and Jazz, which we know and which we use, they can be used straight away. So there's a huge ecosystem out there. We're constantly learning as well. We're very early on our journey using Scala, and it's coming very apparent with how we started from a Java perspective. We're now moving more and more to idiomatic Scala. So the learning curve is very evident as you start using it more. Scala's cool factor makes it easy to recruit. The amount of candidates we have, and I think I said this before, candidates who not normally apply for the role, it was exciting, and for a business, that's really exciting. You've got people who actively want to come and work for you, and Scala and Play is a huge factor in that. Testing is always a topic where people have lots to say. We found it hard to test and Play, looking at it from a Java perspective and what we know. If you look at a Spring applications, you have a model and view, where in Play, if it's more a functional test in your controllers. So what is a unit? There's mixed opinions on this. My opinion is I find it far easier to work in the Play way and play and work with the framework rather than against it. We also found it's easy to get carried away with Scala. You can start doing very clever things. That's sometimes a bad thing. Simple code, which anyone can work on, is sometimes better than clever code. Another thing we noticed is it's very different than PHP. If we're honest, the PHP developers had a very steep learning curve. They enjoyed working with Play. They was excited working with Scala, so they embraced that. But it was very different to the tooling they've used already. Polyglot developers were able to become productive very quickly and take advantages of Scala and the functionality of that and some of the more functional principles. So I think that's me done. I've covered what the application is, why we chose Play and where we now are. I think we've got time for questions.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. That was great. Our team saw you put a similar version to this talk back in January, I believe, at PaintConf, and so we were really excited that we were able to share that with our audience today. And we do have a couple questions here. So let me start. Okay. So I think you addressed this in your presentation, but how big is your developer team currently for this project?
We started off small with 3 to 4 developers, so we could get experience ourselves and pass that on. We're now on the CBeebies team. We're a team of 6, I think, off the top of my head, and CBeebies who now started using plain Scala. Again, I think there are about 6 developers, so there's about 12 people in total now.
Cool. Yeah, it's exciting to see you guys grow. The next question is, so did you have any hiccups with Play while in production? I know you mentioned you hit a few bumps since it's an open source project, but is there anything else you wanted to elaborate on?
There was a few minor bugs, but again, they were easy to identify and easy to resolve. While we had a few hiccups, it's also important to note that Play is being developed constantly, and it's growing at a very fast rate. So while there are hiccups as well, as it is, it's also a very quickly growing application with features being added constantly. Hello?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, great. There's a couple questions here about your decision to use Scala and particularly why you enjoy using it. And so can you talk a little bit more about how you found the language and how you enjoy using it?
Yes. So part of our reasoning behind using Scala is myself and the technical architect, Ashley Glynn at the time, had used Play personally. And we've also used a lot of other frameworks ourselves, and our teams use a lot of frameworks. But Play, for us, gave us everything, and we found that the most productive. The thing with Scala is it's a nice cross-language, and it allows you to do OO and function and FP. So it's a nice language to start learning FP and take advantage of that. And what we were doing was essentially a very simple application. We were taking data in XML format and displaying it, which works quite well. So we found Scala the most attractive option because it allowed us to do many things, but it allowed us, as I said, start out from a Java perspective and go more idiomatic the more we learn. I think there was a question here. Did we consider using JSON for the backend and using something like Angular for the front end for the client-side application? I guess we want to give our application to the widest audience possible. So, and again, accessibility is a very big thing for the BBC. So we didn't do a client-side JavaScript application. It was standard HTML rendered to the DOM. But we do have certain parts of the site which do follow that architecture, where we provide data from Play and then give that to an Angular application.
Great. Next question was, did you have to worry about application performance during the design or during development?
That's a very good question, actually. I think that comes back to our overall optimization. When we started out, we were using Nginx in front and Varnish, the reverse proxy. And we ended up with just hosting Play on 3 C3 medium AWS instances behind a load balancer. We get 3 million unique users a week. And at the minute, our Play application is idling away. We've only got 3 servers in our auto-scaling group for the redundancy. we could essentially host this application on one server and it would still be out on the way. Now, our application is essentially static content, but we require less resources than we do with PHP. So performance hasn't been a problem for us at all. Based on the current infrastructure, which is very, very simple, we could scale to far much traffic before we see any issues. There was a question about an implementation framework here. We've used New Relic quite extensively, and we've not really identified any performance issues, but we do use New Relic, which works quite well.
Great. So there's a question here. Could you please describe in detail one-click deployment?
Yes. Well, that's quite a big topic, but I'll give a... so we use SBT as the build tool. That's in play. We have a task in SBT which generates an RPM. Once the RPM is generated, it makes a RESTful call to some internal BBC tooling with the RPM, and that internal tooling then takes the RPM, it creates a new instance in AWS, it installs that RPM onto the new instance, it saves the AMI, and then we put that AMI into the auto-scaling group. Now that's a very short version of what happens. So we have a build pipeline to generate the RPM. We start up the application in AWS. We run our suite of tests. If our tests pass, we then promote the AMI image to the scaling group through int test and live. It's a bit more complicated than that, but I think we're going to be a bit short on time to go into that a bit further.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. So the next question seems that Play suggests using the default NIO-based server, the Netty server, for deployment. Are there any performance considerations when it comes to generating a warrant and Jetty, for example?
I've no experience on that. For us, we didn't require the overhead of Tomcat or deploying the raw, and the Play service worked extremely well for our needs. If you got an existing infrastructure using Tomcat, I guess it may make sense to deploy as a raw, but because we didn't have that overhead moving to AWS, we found it far simpler to keep a basic architecture and just use Play as the server.
Okay. Well, here's a good question to end on here. So if you could describe the advantage of Play over PHP with one word, what would it be?
Oh, Play over PHP. That's a bit hard because it's a framework against the language. But yeah, I think Play and Scala are awesome.
There you go. Cool. Well, I think that about wraps it up. If we didn't get to your question, we can follow up with you directly and make sure, or if we didn't answer your question in enough detail, we can make sure to dive a little bit deeper. Wanted to let everyone know that the slides here got a little jumbled, but for the recorded version, we're going to see if we can clean them up and make sure that they run a little bit smoother. So if you want to rewatch later or share with your colleagues, you should have a cleaner version of these slides. I also I mentioned Adam's presentation at PingConf in January. I'll send out that link as well so that you guys can watch that. I really encourage you to do so. And any last words, Adam, before we wrap up here and move on to our next presentation?
I hope it's been of use to people, and yeah, if you've got any questions, as Laura said, she'll give my details and I'll try to answer them for you.
Fantastic. All right, guys. So if you're going to be hanging around with us for the next webinar, you're going to have to, the next webinar is with Robert Dietz. He's a software engineer at Angie's List. You're going to have to hop off the line and dial back in. It's a dedicated conference bridge for his line. So we will see you all shortly.